Did you see Friday's episode? I hope you did, because we're back today with a transfer special. Happy Monday, welcome back, Park to Prem. Oh, I'm looking forward to today. This is your final warning. If you've not watched Friday's video, right, good, you saw it. Welcome back. It's episode 49, and we, of course, managed to avoid relegation by the skin of our teeth, and not only that, but deny Manchester City the title by drawing against them on the final day. Liverpool, you are welcome. Now, in terms of today's transfer special, things are going to be interesting. We've got loads of overall balance, a really healthy transfer budget. The wage budget didn't actually go up by as much as I was hoping it would. It does make me a little bit nervous that maybe our reputation isn't going to have improved as much as I hoped it might, and we might face the same issues when it comes to strengthening the team that we did last year. Now, to kick things off today, we've got the end of season review. I'm going to keep this short and succinct, but I think the fundamental bottom line is we had a very good year in the Premier League. Avoiding relegation was the name of the game. In terms of average ratings, you'd normally like to see a bit more green in, well, all the new signings that we brought in. Obviously, that was always going to be a tall order with the players that we signed for them to average above 7.0 ratings as a newly promoted team. I don't care they didn't perform individually. They did what needed to be done. Of course, we did end up finishing 15th in the league in the end. We leaped ahead of both Leeds, West Ham and Birmingham right towards the end of the year. We had an awful period, it has to be said, kind of December and January, just where things really went wrong. Even into February, to be fair, you can see the form here just was not good. But at the end of the year, we got some really big results, including, of course, 7 points in our last 4 games. That was massive. Not entirely surprising that financially, slightly different proposition to previous years. Right now, our club reputation hasn't moved up. That's bad. What is good is the fact that we made £92 million in broadcast revenue. That is £89 million more than we made the previous year. Here was our best 11 for the year. I'm looking through this team thinking, is there any odd inclusions? And you know what? I don't think there is. That is genuinely what I'd consider our best 11 to end the year. Marcus Sheldon won Young Player of the Year and Fans Player of the Year. He also got the goal of the season and was top goal scorer. Unfortunately, our star man is unhappy and wants to move. Fortunately, he's still got another 5 years left on his contract. And I'm going to be honest, when I look at him, he is perhaps the best player in our team by an absolute country mile. I have no intention of selling him. Now, in terms of our supporter profile, interesting to note the casual fans are rising, social media fans are going up, our core and hardcore audience is dropping. Of course, we are still caged in by the fact we play at Brisbane Road, a stadium with a capacity of 9,000 fans. We are currently in the process of searching for a new stadium. It says the planned capacity here is 16,000. That can be readjusted up to the point where the board say, hey, we're building this stadium. I really hope our new ground's going to hold more than 16,000 fans. I'm hoping we're going to be getting it sooner rather than later. Now, in terms of the board's objectives for the upcoming year, a little bit nervous by the fact they've not upped the expectations. I'd kind of expect if they told us to avoid relegation, that they feel like we're a better team than we were at the start of this year. The fact that, again, the expectation for the next however many years is just attempt to avoid relegation makes me worried it could be another long summer. Now, right now it is the 14th of May in game. I'm going to get to the first and we'll have a look at any possible free transfer options. I'm probably going to be looking for the season tick-over date where we get officially kind of a league reset and we'll see what our new reputation's looking like. In terms of the teams being promoted from the Championship, Bournemouth and Ipswich actually meet in the final against one another. Fulham and Burnley, the two teams who have already secured promotion. Fulham have actually been stuck in the Championship for the last couple of years. As for Burnley, they were relegated 2 years ago as well. So 2 teams that are familiar with the Premier League coming up. Not going to lie, kind of wish secretly inside the teams getting promoted were a little weaker than the teams that are coming up. Okay, folks, it is now the 1st of June in game. I'll be honest, not a great deal happening. A couple of little bits of news. I've tried to sign Phil Rolk on a permanent deal. Of course, we've had him on loan this year. He wants £50,000 a week. That is not a loan I can afford to, well, extend in terms of as a permanent transfer. If Udinese want to give me him for another year, that'd be grand. He's currently on like £2,000 Udinese. Where has 50 grand come from? Oh, and in some news regarding the stadium, we have actually had it confirmed. We are moving into a new stadium. It will hold 24,000 fans. That's the good-ish news. The bad news, it's not going to be ready for 3 years. So at least for now, we are going to continue to ground share with Leyton Orient for the foreseeable future. which is a shame because we could make a lot of money off just being able to sell more than 9,000 tickets per game. So I have already started planning out what my approach for this summer transfer window is going to be. First and foremost, I really need to sell some players. I've kind of blocked out here a bench and starting 11 of players that I like. There's some players here that aren't on the bench that I feel like we could possibly look to sell. Someone like Ollie Johnson, for as good as he's been this year, I have now got question marks over his potential. When he joined us, as a staff rated him highly. He's been here longer, they've reviewed him more. If I could get some money for him, that could be quite nice, especially because I have got some other strikers that I'm looking to promote to the first team this year. And elsewhere, you'll notice a sea of names in purple, loads and loads of players that have been out on loan, some for multiple years, like James Burgess here, and then some for only, well, 1 year. In the case of Niall Townsend, who, I'll be honest, I loaned him out to Bromley. I actually don't think he's changed as a footballer in the last year, and that is really disappointing. Of the players we've loaned out, a man who I really like the look of actually is James Wiles, who we loaned to Cambridge United. He's been playing in League 2 all year. Am I going crazy thinking he might be good enough to just be a squad-ish option for us? Like, all I'm saying is if I'm going to sell the likes of Mbete and Will Fish, there could be a spot in the first team for the youngster. So there's definitely going to be some selling we're trying to do. Of course, there's a load of players like Joe Gelhardt, Dane Scarlett, who we loaned out this year in the hopes that might drum up some interest. I'm still hoping I can move on those players for a little bit of money. In terms of the first team and players currently at the club, I have blocked out what I consider to be the starting 11 that could start next year, and I wouldn't be all that mad. I feel like fundamentally we need to improve things at the back. I know there'll be some people rolling eyes at the fact that I think Caleb Anson is still good enough to be our goalkeeper this year. You can see here in terms of his goalkeeping numbers for the year, his expected goals prevented per 90 isn't actually that bad. I feel like a 0.04 for that isn't awful, especially given the fact that very often we were conceding high XG chances in games. And in fact, if we just look at the league table here and go to goals scored, we were actually one of the more prolific teams going forward. We scored the 8th most goals as a club in the Premier League, despite the fact that for a lot of last season, we did play on that cautious mentality. In terms of goals conceded, well, this is where we kind of had our issues, isn't it? We conceded 69 goals. That was the 3rd worst defence in the league, and I think to remedy that, I need some new centre-backs. Now, you'll notice here, Daniel Hoey doesn't even make the bench. I'll be honest, Hoey here, I like the look of. He has not improved in the last season, which does just scare me a little bit. You look at his overall development here, there is not really signs of life or improvement. Some question marks over his potential as well. I feel like he could be a very good backup centre-back option for us. I feel like maybe I should be looking to do better than him. And equally at right centre-back, I feel like a new person might be needed there. Of course, Philip Rolk held down that position for a lot of this year. He's not renewing his loan at the club in terms of as a permanent deal. If Udinese want to give me him for another year, I might loan him if they'll be as kind to do that. JJ, who is another centre-back option for us, is currently unhappy and is really in risk of running down his contract. He wants a wage rise onto £30,000 a week. I'm not going to give him that. There is interest in him as a permanent transfer, and rather than losing him for nothing next summer, it's probably in my interest to sell him now. Sadly, when it comes to selling players, of course, I am really going to be waiting for that transfer window to open in a little under 2 weeks. That is where maybe we'll start to get a few more bids on players. The other position where I feel like we could maybe do better is defensive mid. Of course, Carl Flood has missed a load of football at the end of this year with his torn hamstring, but he is comfortably our best defensive mid option. I feel like behind him there's this vacuum of power. There is someone who needs to step up and play as that defensive mid. Of course, we've got players like James McConnell here who could play defensive mid for us, but I really view him as one of our right-back options for the coming year. Alternatively, in terms of the other players I could play at defensive mid, Haig Doltz, JJ, who I've already mentioned I want to sell, Joe Bellingham are the only other players listed here. I like Dolk, of course. He was perhaps our main go-to defensive mid this year. I think it's safe to say he is not Premier League quality right now. And despite the fact it's listed here that he has a load of potential, we've had him for a couple of years now. I can kind of review his development and tell you he is not improving. So I think those 3 areas really are the high priority positions to try and sort for the coming year. Elsewhere at centre attacking mid, I have my reservations about Aaron Ramsey. If we can maybe get an improvement there, that would be nice. And alternatively, at left back, as much as I love Hutchinson, I do feel like his defensive inability was something that teams looked to target last year. So if there's a really good left back option out there, maybe Amari drops down to play more of a squad role for next season. But, and it is a rather big but, despite the fact we have transfer budget and wage budget, actually finding players of the quality I need, I don't think is going to be an easy task. If I just sort players here that are interested in a transfer sorted by value, you'll notice there's a distinct lack of top-end Premier League players. In fact, there's barely any Premier League players that actually show in the list. The vast majority of players showing up here were relegated with Birmingham, Norwich, or Southampton, or are players that are still stuck in the Championship. And naturally, with respect to someone like Morgan Rogers, who I'm sure will be way better next year in Football Manager, here in this save game, he is just not good enough to get anywhere near my team. And I know what you're thinking as well, you know, sorting by transfer value, that's not the best reflection of player ability. If I just sort by star ratings, you can see is still very much a problem. Samuel Shashua here is apparently the best of the bunch of the players we've scouted. I'm just sat here shaking my head. I feel like I have to hope that on the 20th of June, when the league kind of resets, or I think it's like actually the 23rd of June, whenever it is, the reputation has jumped where there's more players in this list, because this is really uninspiring. Honestly, of all the players in this list, and I have had a little bit of a look through over the last 2 weeks, Will Lancashire might be the best of the bunch. I don't know if I necessarily need another striker, but a 25-year-old, super consistent, really good important matches, currently wanted by Burnley, who have just been promoted, of course. They're going to be looking for additions. The issue is, whilst his wages are affordable, his valuation, assuming it hasn't moved down, and it hasn't, means that I'd be spending half my transfer budget on a player who, in reality, definitely isn't as good as Marcus Sheldon, and when compared to Rashid Mohammed, I'm not sure can actually justify the £20 million it might cost me. It's easy to forget with players like Rashid here. The man's 21 years old. He has still got room to grow. I suppose actually that's a really important thing to remember with a lot of players in our team. We've invested a lot in some really good young players, and I do need to give them time to develop. As much as it is tempting to just go out there and try and make wholesale changes to improve the team, a lot of the players that we used last year are young. They did develop with Premier League football. Maybe now going into a new season, even if I didn't sign anyone, we'd stand a better chance of staying up. Anyway, the reason I came back on this date was just to see if there was any players that I could approach to sign on free transfers. Will Alves here of Leicester is a player I could sign. He's not very good, is he? Daniel Ballard here has just been relegated by Birmingham. Whilst I have already identified, you know, that centre-back position as an area to improve, this guy is not the improvement I need. And even if I just sort by world reputation, Ruben Loftus-Cheek wouldn't be a bad addition, you'd think, on paper. But when you look at his actual attributes, safe to say that age is having its effect on him. I did think when I saw Southampton get relegated, maybe I should look at some of their players. Obviously, they've had 3 years in the Premier League. Who have they got I could sign? Then I looked at the wages for their players and realised their top 3 earners are on a combined £355,000 a week. That is about the same as my entire first team. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to mash continue quite a lot here. I feel like there is players I could go for now which wouldn't be improvements and would be a waste of money. I need to be patient. I need to try and sell on some players as well. Of course, we're in a world where, having stayed up, maybe a few of our players start attracting interest. That was one thing I really struggled with last year. I do feel like your team's reputation has some kind of influence on the bids that you get for your own players. Maybe because we stayed up, players will be easier to sell this year. I really hope that's the case. It's not even the 12th of June yet. Got our first bid on a player. JJ Bid from Coventry. They've offered 4.5 million. I'm going to be a bit cheeky here and just ask for 5 million with a 20% sell on. They've accepted that. It's not exactly the big bucks, but if I can move on all the kind of periphery squad players for £5 million, that would very, very quickly see our transfer budget jump up. I know what someone's thinking as well. Jack, just save up and buy Andy White. I don't think Leicester will sell him to me. Not even sure if he'll necessarily want to join us. Yeah, he doesn't even want to join me. He's valued at 77 million. Even if I sell a lot of players, don't think we could afford that. You might remember Joe Gelhardt we loaned to Huddersfield, and as part of that deal, if they stayed up in the Championship, they had to buy him. Good news for us, they've stayed up, they have to buy him. It's £8 million. It is involving some instalments, but you know what? 8 million for Gelhardt, that's another good sale. So I have just offered out a load of players in the reserves. No offers for 7 players. Some offers, though, on the table. Sochaux have made a bid here for Jeremy Lechevier. It's not even £1 million. This guy's never going to play for us, though, so I'm just going to take the money and run. Had 2 offers in the region of £400,000 for Will Fish. That's probably a bargain for a League One team, but I don't want this guy to even be a squad player for me next year. He is just not good enough. We signed him for 210k. We are pretty much guaranteed to make a profit. I'm not even going to bother negotiating them. And we've also had an offer for Luke Mbete here. Loyal servants, the club, with us from League One. Didn't start a single game for us in the Premier League. I am going to need to perhaps get in another left-footed centre-back to be the backup to Arian B. I know I have to pay some wages of his, but you know what? I'm going to take the money and run again. Have managed to confirm one signing. I actually forgot about this one. You know the inbox sign that comes through in April where teams are releasing their players? Well, Liverpool were releasing Callum Ditchfield here. Now, he looks really, really good, doesn't he? In terms of he's good at jumping. He's not a bad centre-back at 18. The catch, limited potential, and also he has a bit of an issue with injuries. As you can see here, the fact he suffered a hip injury this year, I think might be one of the reasons they didn't renew his contract. We've signed him on a free transfer. He's going to be in our youth team. I feel like best case scenario, we flip him on for some money in a year or two. Remember Corey Gerrard? Yeah, he spent the last year on loan at Kilmarnock. I've offered him out for some money. He's not a bad player, and at 20 years old, you could be mistaken for thinking he could be really, really good. But just due to what my staff is saying regarding his potential, I feel like now is a good time to cash in on him. We brought him in for 425k, 2 offers from Ipswich and Norwich. Gonna just try and negotiate these so it's a bit more money up front. Have just managed to negotiate £3 million with Ipswich and a 40% profit of sell-on. Norwich don't want to do the same deal, so I'm going to reject their offer, and then the Ipswich Town one that are negotiated here, I am just going to accept. We have also had our first transfer offer for Sheldon. Good news, it's come from Fulham, who were just promoted. He has no interest in joining them. The offer they made was for 45 million. I'll be honest, I feel like Sheldon at this moment in time is just unsellable. There is no one who I could sign who's going to be able to compete with his quality and ability. And if we're being real for a moment, 15 goals to his name. Bizarrely, I think that made him the second highest goal scorer in the Premier League. Indeed, it did. Alongside Sarr of Tottenham. No idea how he got 15 goals. Answers on a postcard. But yeah, second highest goal scorer in the Premier League. Our player, 21 years old, room to grow. Probably the reason we stayed up. I won't be selling him. I've had a load of loan offers for Dane Scarlett. I don't want to loan him out. I need a bid. He spent the last year out on loan, of course, a really useful player for us back in the day. But yeah, if I could get anything close to £4 million for him, I'd be very, very happy. We have had some offers for JB as well. Actually, fairly healthy looking offers from Millwall and QPR. As a reminder, we signed him on a free transfer, played for us 8 times in the Premier League, averaged a 6.65 rating. I think the time has come to move on. These bids aren't bad. I would like to negotiate it so there's a bit more of this money up front. QPR have just matched my valuation of him when I've removed the future instalments and just asked for it all up front, so they can have him for 5.25 million. As for Millwall, I'm going to do the exact same to them. Their initial bid was a bit lower. Yeah, had a sneaking suspicion they wouldn't be able to afford it. Fingers crossed, though, he will be on his way to QPR. And well, the first of hopefully a few sales going on here. JJ, £5 million received. Of course, this was something we were looking to do last year and just weren't able to pull off. Trying to generate a little bit more money, a bit more spending power would be nice. Jeremy Lachevier is also going. I mean, like, he was a French agent. Even though he was part English, he was probably a spy. So I think we've done well to vote him out as a traitor and sell him to Sochaux. Just seen here that Gabadibo, who was a player we looked at, I think, last year, has asked to move from Exeter. He has an active relegation release clause of 2.6 million. He's actually a very good player. I don't know what position you play him in. Probably train him to play left wing back, but 20 years old for 2 million, that feels like a low risk transfer. He wants £10,000 to £14,000 and to be a squad player. The club will not be a stepping stone and you will be an impact sub. He's actually okay with that. £12,000 a week isn't too bad. Hate the fact he's asking for release clauses. I feel like this year I'm maybe going to be a little less averse to relegation release clauses, but especially release clauses to teams in the Champions League. Not a fan of those. Have had to up the wage offer a little bit. £18,000 a week, though, is definitely a stomachable amount. It will rise slightly to £20,000 as well once he's played a certain number of league games for us. Like the look of this guy, though. I think he will be more of a left-back option for us rather than at centre-back, even though he can allegedly play there. Has some really good physicals and some really good mentals, too. I could see a world this year where Hutchinson goes from being the left-back option to being more an option at centre-attack in mid, and then Gavin Wallace and Gabadibo here kind of battle it out to be our main left-back option for the season. Two very good young players. Do wonder if there's a different position to play Nahum in. I just feel like when you look at his attributes, he is a wing-back, and that's kind of that. Ultimately, though, £2.6 million for a 20-year-old with some potential. Hard to be mad, isn't it? Just realised that I've offered out some players in the reserve team and managed to get in some offers. Maybe should be offering out some of these players in the first team here. Oliver Johnson. I don't necessarily want to sell Oliver, but if I could get £10 million for him, especially because I've got some reservations over his potential, it'd be quite good. We signed Bernard Brennan, you might remember, in January from Lincoln City. He is actually a very, very similar mould of player, but he's 2 years younger, and my staff think he has significantly more potential. So with that in mind, we probably already have the Johnson replacement at the club if I move him on. So 10 million would be kind of a really good deal. Of all the players we've had loaned out for the second half this year, the player who I'm perhaps most excited to have in the team this year is Gavin Gallagher. At the end of this year, you might remember Flood tore his hamstring. We didn't really have a playmaking option to come in as, well, an alternative. I feel like Gavin Gallagher is that man. He's definitely a specialist as a deep line playmaker with his vision. Although he is a fairly mobile player, you kind of compare him to Flood. Similar mould, a year younger, not quite as good physically. But Joe Bellingham, of course, was that man who slotted in at deep line playmaker. And if we just compare Gallagher with him, with attributes, and then highlight deep line playmaker, you start to see here how Gavin definitely has the edge to play this role. And I think it is a very, very important role in how we play. In a weird way, Bellingham here, I'm not necessarily opposed to selling. We gave him a lot of appearances, really. 11 start, 18 appearances on off the bench too. He failed to impress me all that much, and I do look at him as a player we brought in on a free, especially because I'm conscious of the fact we've got a relegation release clause for him. Maybe I should just offer him out and just see if there's any interest. I feel like we can do a little bit of this season where we offer players out that maybe we don't have to sell just to see if there is any interest and any nibbles. Millwall have made an offer for Dane Scarlett, £4 million. I'm just going to accept that and run. I've had a few more offers from Norwich and Burnley here for Gerrard, of course. I've already accepted a bid of £3 million and then 40% of any sell-on from Ipswich. Norwich aren't willing to go there, so they are just wasting my time. As for Burnley, you know what, Burnley, we have a history of negotiating with you, and you being a very reasonable football team. So, given the fact they've bid the same as Ipswich, I'm just going to accept that one. We have also had some offers for Oliver Johnson. I was hoping that we'd get some really big bids for him. I signed him for £6 million, which was inherently a gamble, but we had money to spend, and I was hoping I could turn a profit for him. Based on the bids I've received here, I'm going to do very well to turn a profit for him. I want 9.5 million. They've walked away from that. Sheffield United, 9.5 million. Unsurprisingly, they've walked away from it. Damak in Saudi Arabia. You lot should have some money, surely. 9.5, they've walked away too. Obviously, I discussed this idea of selling Ollie Johnson. The caveat is that I don't have to sell him. So if the bid was right, I'd move him on. None of those bids were right. First major signing of the transfer window done. Gabadebo is going to join us. I eyed him up last year as an option. I do feel like he is a very, very good 20-year-old. Still annoys me all the positions that he can play, but he's got a little bit of potential. I feel like it's a pretty low-risk deal. He immediately joins the club, and we are instantly going to start training him to play at wing-back. One player who I have promoted to the first team that I've not really talked about is Rudy Shirtliff. Do you remember me talking about him and making some awful pun about lifting up his shirt or something? The 19-year-old has actually developed really, really well this year. I've got him preliminarily on the bench right now. To be honest, I feel like a loan move to a championship club probably would be the best thing for his development. But he's got some absolutely crazy physicals, some really good determination. He is super consistent as well. His valuation is not small. I'm going to offer him out for loan. If we get a bid that's right and that I think will help his development, I'll move him on. If it doesn't happen, may well find himself featuring in the first team from time to time. I'm still waiting, crucially, to get to that point in about a week's time where the season updates. I'm desperately hoping our reputation's going to go up. But you know what? In the meantime, I'm having fun selling some more players. Torre here, we signed for 76k. He's not done anything for us. It was kind of a signing made because we had money and I felt like a body at striker would be useful. We're going to make some profit. I think that's the best that can be said about this deal. Mbete is leaving the club as well. Didn't quite get £1 million for him up front, although it could rise to total exactly £1 million if the terms are met. Good player, not good enough for us. And elsewhere, Will Fish is also leaving the club. Technically, we are making profit on him. Technically. I mean, it's not a lot of money, but it's a player off the books. Now, a mini heap here I signed last year from Blackburn for 800k. He went on loan to Blackburn and had an okay loan spell. Wasn't exactly great for them. But I do look at the 20-year-old and there's some major question marks over his potential and also the fact he's a little inconsistent. I actually don't think he's the worst centre-back in the world, but we have some very, very good players in this part of the pitch specifically. I don't see a way he gets into the first team, so I offered him out hoping to make some money. I've had a offer from QPR. It's not quite enough. I'll try and negotiate 1.5 million and then a percentage of profit. Have a sneaking suspicion, yeah, that they weren't going to go for it. Maybe I could do it in kind of installments. How about this QPR? I want a little bit more money. I want, you know what, I'll be reasonable. I want 1.8 million. You can pay half of that in 6 months. I also want 40% of any profit. You know what? Never mind. JB is leaving the club. We only get a small proportion of the money that we're raising right now for our players into the transfer budget. But you know what? £3 million has never hurt anyone. For a player that we signed on a free transfer in League 2, he served his purpose. Loyal servant to the club. I feel like clapping him off here as I sell him to QPR. £5 million. You can't even be upset, can you, really? Corey Gerrard is going to Burnley. £3 million for this guy. Look, it's not crazy money, but we signed him for £500,000. Another player signed from Exeter that we flipped on for some cash. And yeah, it goes in the kitty. It's not like we need a load of money to be raised at the moment, but now our transfer budget sits over 50 million. Thinking about it while we're here, should we ask for the transfer percentage of transfer revenue to be increased? Right now, we're only getting 60% of all these sales. I feel like I've sold enough players, they should be giving me more. Transfer special where I've already sold 5 players. I'll tell you what, I've really struggled to sell players in this save game. This is new. There's a few players here in the under-21s like Bob Davis here, who I've had my eye on for ages, but I've kind of accepted. He's never going to be good enough for us, even if he has loads of potential, who I'm just offering out for money. Similar story with Ryan Smith here. Good player. Feel like he's going to struggle to reach his potential, so I'm going to try and cash in on him. A lot of these players that I think are failing to reach their potential for us are kind of falling victim of the fact that our youth recruitment is good, but our junior coaching and youth facilities is lagging behind a little bit. So whilst due to our youth recruitment, players are generating with really high potential abilities, their current abilities are so far away, they're never going to improve enough to kind of cover that deficit. Definitely want to be looking to invest more in the facilities this year, especially with how much money we've now got in the bank. Okay, this is some good news. Percentage of transfer revenue is increasing to 100%. So if we move on any more players, we get all the cash to reinvest. Have also just noticed here, I had a note when I hit continue pop up. There's a player who I was looking at called Corby, who we'll come to in a moment. I think his name's Corby Hatswell, who is very, very good and plays for Plymouth. It's his 18th birthday on the 26th, and I'm hoping he might want to join me then. In fact, you can see him here. So if you didn't know this, sometimes players, when you go and make an offer for them, they'll say they don't want to join you. They think their development serve better at their current club. Just because of how Football Manager works, when they turn 18, they do a U-turn and change their mind. This guy is 17. Admittedly, he doesn't have a face. If we sign him, we will solve that. Really, really good potential ability. Great current ability as well. 7 assists in the Championship as a 17-year-old is kind of mad. A lot of big teams did want him as well. It's his birthday on the 28th. So, yeah, I'm going to send him a birthday card, offer him some flowers. I feel like he is a player I'd really like to sign, even if it does cost me 14 million. I think long-term it might be worth it. By the way, Premier League signing of the season, Amari Hutchinson for us for 3.3 million is listed as one of the best signings. You know what? I'll take that. Did also notice on the Premier League review here, we were the biggest overachievers. Predicted to finish 20th, finishing 15th. Things you love to see. Apparently, we enjoyed a small reputation boost. The leaderboard pops up. I hit continue once more. And now we pray that we're going to have a reputation of more than 3 stars. And maybe now there's going to be new players interested. Board expectation is still attempt to avoid relegation. Media prediction is still 20th. It's not changed since last year. And our reputation has not gone up. Well, it has gone up. Not as much as I was hoping. Here is a list of clubs in the country sorted by reputation. In spite of that season that we've just had, we are firmly planted in the middle of all the championship teams for rep. So we basically have the reputation of a mid-table championship team, which when you're trying to recruit players good enough to keep you up in the Premier League on very limited budgets that have to be English, it does make things tricky. Of all the things the board could be investing in right now, improving the wage budget for performance analysts isn't exactly what I want to see them investing in. Can we improve the club's youth facilities? We appreciate your input. We feel our own proposal's better. Okay, will someone let our performance analysts know they can have wage rises? I mean, what is the point? Stuart Knight, our president, is a moron, isn't he? I was hoping that maybe on the season preview screen, our odds to stay up would look better. No, we are still very much firmly planted at the bottom, below all the newly promoted teams as well. Not ideal. I didn't think I was that deluded, hoping that when all the season tick over and update stuff happened, there'd be new players available. I'm looking at the list of players interested in transfers. I feel like it's literally the same list of players. I mean, it is the same list of players, isn't it? I mean, good news, Luke Shaw, age 34, playing in Russia, now wants to join us. Football Manager really sometimes pulls out some wild transfers, doesn't it? Anthony Robinson as well is an option. He's not an option, though, is he? He's just not. I feel like this year I'm probably not going to actually sign that many players if this is the state of play. Instead, I'm just going to try and let as many of our young players develop, flip some players on for money, and hope that if a really big transfer does become available, I can move in for them. I mean, Amari Forson's listed here. Is Amari Forson worth an upgrade? He's a little bit injury prone. He's also on £48,000 a week. His stats in Serie A aren't exactly inspiring, are they? Ezio Torre set to join Parma. By the way, you can see here, his media description is actually listed as late developer. You don't see that often in Football Manager. He developed late. He got to play in the Premier League. Now he's got to move to Parma for what it's worth. I hope he enjoys his time back in Italy. There were a few pre-contracts I agreed with players that were going to kick in at the end of the season. Amari Hutchinson has renewed on £23,000 a week. Haig Dolk's renewed on £16,000 a week. Ajaria, £30,000 a week. Yep, that is an overpay. I'll admit it. And also Rudy Shirtliff, who I've talked about already, he actually had a release clause in his contract I was very keen to get rid of. So we have managed to remove that. He signed that new deal, contracted for 5 years. Dane Scarlett, another man leaving the building. I'm selling so many players today. We're not signing anyone, but I do actually feel like we're getting a lot done. Aaron Ramsey wants to discuss a new contract. I was actually able, earlier on in the season, to lower his playing time to impact sub. Of course, he has been asking for a new contract for ages. He wants 41,000 to 51,000 and to be vice-captain. If I'm being honest, I look at his valuation and the fact he's got 2 years left on his contract. It might not even be the worst idea to see if we can sell him. He might not react well to me offering him out. Well, tough. I'm going to probably offer him out here. His agent doesn't think there's going to be any interest. Does an intermediary think there's going to be any interest? No. Probably because of his wage demands, really, isn't it? At the moment, I have got him down as a starter, but even if I got like £20 million bid for him, I'd probably accept it. He's more than likely going to run down his contract unless I pay him the £40,000 he thinks he's worth. And I'm not going to pay him that, am I? So with that in mind, selling him feels sensible, or at least trying to explore that as an option. I'd still really, really like to sign Rolk. When we loaned him, there was an agreement that for £3 million we could sign him permanently. The issue is these wage demands. What is this as a wage demand? I love that going into this, our director of football says, I think Rolk wants a wage we may not be able to afford. You know what? I don't think we can afford it either. I've got my Hatswell reminder. If you want to know how to set up these reminders, by the way, you just go to History Notes, then create a note, and then you can actually set a reminder date in the bottom corner for when you want it to be. So for Hatswell, I thought I put it on his 18th birthday. Turns out I put it 2 days early. So I'll be back in 2 days, Corby. Okay, it's the 29th in game. I forgot his birthday after all of that. Corby Hatswell, are you interested in a transfer? He has a minimum release clause to teams in a higher division of 17 million. I mean, his valuation implies that I'm probably not going to be able to get him for that. Well, okay, Plymouth have just accepted £14 million. That is perhaps a massive overpay. Now, you know what? Actually, I don't think it is an overpay. I genuinely think this guy is going to be a really, really cracking little player. I don't think he necessarily solves our defensive midfielder position now. In some ways, I wouldn't be opposed to loaning him back to Plymouth for the year because he's clearly been developing there. But we have money to spend. I'm not going to have many players to spend it on. We've sold a load of players for a load of money, albeit because Football Manager's stupid. They all appear on this second screen here. But when you add up all the sales we've made, we've sold £19 million worth of players. Let's reinvest some of that. Okay, after all of that, everything's been ruined. He just signed a new contract with Plymouth, and I didn't even notice it. So he won't be joining us. Well, I'll be back one day soon, Corby, I promise. Also, the little yellow square that I have on him is annoying me, so I'm going to delete the note so that the yellow square above his name stops appearing. Am I kidding myself, or does this guy just look really, really good? Like, my scouts think he could improve a lot. They think he's already a championship-level player, and I'm inclined to agree. Oh, I really like him. Sadly, he's not an option for now. In some other news, Matthew Chapman here, who's about to run down his contract at the club, has had an offer made for him by Blackburn. You know what? I tried to negotiate with Norwich earlier a similar kind of contract. It didn't work. I'm just going to make sure we get some money for him before he walks in 2 days. I'll tell you what, we've got so much going on in the next couple of days. So many players leaving, some players' contracts expiring. Oh my word, I've got so many emails to go through. It's like real life right now. Some sad news, Miles Roberts has been released on a free. He's been here from the beginning. He played that one game in the Championship and conceded free. His time is done in Wanderers colours. In some other news, a few different sales going on. One of them I don't think I've talked about really, Kevin Pinto. You might remember he was our backup right back a couple of years ago in the Championship. We signed him for 23k. Didn't play a single game for us last year at right back. Had a healthy offer of 300k, so just decided to cash in on him. Elsewhere, Ezio Torre officially leaving the club. Joe Gelhardt, of course, leaving for £8 million. Of course, that was a loan deal where Huddersfield agreed to loan him and pay that if they stayed up. Thank you for that money. He definitely didn't contribute all that much to them staying up. And in some other news here, Colin George, who's actually, his contract's up at the end of the year, and I'm probably not going to be able to renew it. We've had an offer made for him. Now, we've signed him for 150k from Fylde. I'd quite like to just sell him on now. Blackpool, annoyingly here, making a loan, not a transfer bid. Do they have money to spend? They don't. I do also have an option to buy Jimmy J. Morgan if I want. The optional fee is £20 million, which I'm definitely not going to be paying for him. He's not a bad striker. I'll be honest, he was actually fairly useful at points through last year. For 20 million, it's a no-go. His value is actually less than that, so I could probably get him a little cheaper potentially from Forest, but I feel like we're better off seeing what other attacking options might be out there. Clubs in England release players. I'm looking here thinking English players? I mean, Jeremy Doku's now a free transfer. Don't suppose he's taken up English nationality, has he? No, sadly not. Badiashile, I mean, look, he's played enough time in England to get citizenship. He's just not taking it up. So, as a result of that, I can't sign him. He's not English, no transfer. Jack Harrison's available on a free. No, thank you. Philip Schmitz here is a German international who's just been released by Man City. I don't suppose he's got English citizenship. Is he a good centre-back? He's definitely more of a right-back, kind of, although he's got no attacking ability. He can't really head a ball, but as a ball-playing defender who's 21 with international caps, I feel like you could do a lot worse. I kind of want to sign him. He's already got offers from Hull in the Championship and then Saudi Arabia. There's a lot of teams interested. I'm joining the queue. He wants to be a star player. He wants the training facilities improved. I can accept both those things. £41,000. He wants a yearly wage rise of 10%. Mate, we cannot do that. I mean, given the fact this is a free transfer, I am willing to obviously give him a lot more money just in terms of signing on fees and stuff. Do not like the sell-on fee percentage being quite as high as 20%, mind you. Okay, I suggested an offer. He's willing to negotiate and talk. I'll do 5% of a sell-on. He's accepted that offer. I mean, there's a lot of teams interested in him, but at 21 years old, as a free transfer centre-back, he's good. I mean, he didn't show up in any of my player searches before. Given the fact it's the 1st of July now, and yeah, players have been released, maybe there's going to be a few new names here that I should be looking at. I'll tell you what, there's more than a few new names. I mean, Ollie Watkins, I feel like aged 34, probably not the solution to the problems that we have right now. But maybe there's other players out there. Although, looking at it, it's all just old players at the top. Harvey Elliott is available as a free transfer, though. Released by Liverpool. He's played 4 league games in the last 2 years. They have just not used him. What does his agent think? £53,000 to £73,000. A release clause. I'm going to say that's quite the list of release clauses, and I'd like to remove them. He would be so good at centre attacking mid for us, wouldn't he? Right now, I've got Ramsey at centre attacking mid. Harvey Elliott is just a crazy upgrade if I could get him. He wants to be a star player, that's fine. He wants a match highest earner clause, and that wage is a lot higher than I had been promised previously. Good news, because our transfer budget's so high here, I'm actually going to rejig a significant amount of it into the wage budget, looking at all the free transfers we might be looking to do. I'll offer 60,000 is a crazy amount for us. But now that we've avoided getting relegated once, I feel like I have to commit to this second year now, following up that success with staying up again. A signing like this would make it happen. I'm going to do a risky thing here. If we get relegated, he can leave for 15 million. If we don't get relegated, there's no release clause involved. What does he think of that? Oh my word, it's so much money. And yet, I'll be honest, I feel like I've still got to try and negotiate something here because he is really that good. He's only got 1 cap for England in this A game. If he starts getting caps, he can have 40k for every single one. And you know what? If he plays 10 games for England, I will up his wages to 81k. How does that sound? I feel like we're getting closer, but he's now snuck in a yearly wage rise of 15%, which I just can't pay. Given our current wage predicament, an offer like this is absolutely insane, but I feel like I've just got to take a bit of a gamble here. I'm signing him on a long-term deal. That sell-on percentage of 20% puts me in a position where I'd never want to sell him, and it's still not enough. I can't believe he's turned that down. I feel like if I offered any more than that, I would be scolded in the comments. I feel like he's so good. That actually makes me sad. I mean, on the other hand, it gives me hope that maybe there is still some pretty good players out here that might be worth signing, but I think he was top of the list for a reason. There's no other players showing up in this list that kind of jump out at me. Schmitz would be a crazy signing if we could pick him up from Man City. I'm now just looking at players that are transfer listed to see if there's new players listed here either. At Cardiff, I've just noticed, Cardiff are in League 2 in this save game, and Alex Robertson is still with them in League 2. That's actually wild. I mean, he needs to be evacuated. They're asking for £12 million. No one is ever going to pay that. I'm just sat here now thinking, should I have gone in for Harvey Elliott? I'm now looking at players transfer listed just to see what's out there. It was a crazy offer I gave him. I don't feel like I could have given him much more. I was offering him more than double our next highest earner, which was already somewhat absurd if we're being real. He has also now snubbed my offer of a trial. I mean, there's teams interested in him. I feel like some of those, like Forest, probably can't afford his wages. Oh, I just have to hope he stays as a free agent. Maybe he lowers his demands in a week or two if no one signs him, but that feels so unlikely. Rolk and Morgan have finished their loans at the club. Oh, I'd still love to sign Rolk, but the wages were just crazy on what he was asking for. His wage demands, now he's gone back to them, have lowered slightly. I mean, would Udinese just loan him against me for the year? No, because I made an offer already that I then withdrew from because of his wage demands. Brilliant. I love Football Manager's logic sometimes. I really wanted Philip Schmitz. I feel like it's going to be a tall order now. The list of teams making offers is growing. We are still the only Premier League team. We've had an offer here for Colin George. You might remember him as a player that we signed in the Championship thinking he might be a useful squad player. He probably won't be. We signed him for 150k. I'm going to make some profit off him. Not perhaps as much as I was hoping for, but you know what? We'll take every little bit of money we can get right now. It's quite therapeutic getting rid of all these squad players that, well, they were squad players in the Championship, now they are just fodder. I love Niall Townsend here, but his loan spell at Bromley was absolutely shambolic, and I'm looking at that transfer value thinking, he's never going to be worth 20 million. I'm going to just offer him out and see if anyone makes an offer. I will just also set his loan status to be unavailable for loan. I don't really want to loan him out anymore. I want to make 20 million. Probably not going to manage that, but I can dream. James Burgess is another player I need to make a decision on. We signed him back in League One for £500,000. He has spent the last 2 years out on loan at various clubs. His current contract does actually expire at the end of the year. I have tabled him a new contract offer, but there's part of me tempted before he signs that new deal just to see if there is any interest in someone signing him on a permanent basis. So with that in mind, I'm going to offer him out. If we end up having to renew his loan and there's no permanent interest, not the end of the world. I definitely still feel like there's money to be made on him. Rasheen Mohammed wants to discuss a new contract. He's still got 5 years left on his current deal. He wants £20,000 to £25,000. And release clauses. Apparently I'm going to need to agree to those clauses if I'm going to get a deal done. I mean, there's no reason why I have to give him a new contract here, really. I'm going to remove and exclude the release clauses and just see what his agent asks for in response. I just don't need to do it. He's got a deal right now on £5,000 for 5 years until the end of 2034. He can wait for a new deal. Okay, it turns out he doesn't like the idea of waiting for a new deal. I'm just going to tell him things aren't earned for free. Work if you want a contract, mate. You've got 5 years at the club. I can make it a living hell. Had a new offer from Burton for Colin George. I actually just negotiated it up to 600k because they've offered more. than Watford did, I'm now going to reject that Watford offer for him. If you're wondering, by the way, the Premier League season actually starts a bit later this year. I'm not sure why it's starting so late. Maybe someone can let me know. It starts on the 18th of August. That feels really late this year. Is that me just being crazy? Last year it started on the 5th of August, so it is starting quite a bit later. I mean, that's probably a benefit to us. I realised that I started today's episode talking about defence, mid and centre-backs. I'm not made any progress on that, have I? I'll tell you what, it's a good job it's a long pre-season. I mean, in terms of centre-backs out there, I'll be honest, it is very slim pickings. Getting Schmitz in would be absolutely crazy if we could do it. It would solve the problem to an extent. I still would like to sign Rolk, but obviously the wages are the problem there. And right now, because I withdrew after we made a release clause offer for him, Udinese don't now want to even consider me loaning him. I'll make a new offer. We'll see if he's lowered his wage demands now he's gone back to Italy. I offered out Shirtliff on loan here as a kind of chance for him to maybe develop. Bizarrely, Fulham have made an offer to loan him, and it's actually not an unreasonable offer. They want to make him a squad player in the Premier League and pay all his wages. My concern here is, if he develops with Fulham and keeps them up, he could be compelling me to a relegation battle. But I don't feel like he's that good. He could be quite a good player to go to Fulham and maybe derail their season by them having to play him. I mean, as a squad player, he should hopefully get some game time. I actually think it's quite a good loan. Emily Heap, who I've already kind of insinuated I do want to sell. I've just had an offer made for him. We signed him for 800k last year, having been at the club for a year, albeit out on loan. A few question marks about his overall ability and development and just how good he can really be. Listed as a championship player. This offer from Bristol City is not bad. I'm going to ask for £1 million up front and 50% of any profit. Okay, that was greedy. James Burgess in the end didn't have any interest in him, so we've renewed his contract. And another player to keep your eye on is Peter Ahmed. This 19-year-old came through our intake, and I don't think I made a song and a dance about him. He has just developed really, really well over the last few years. I mean, you could make a pretty good argument he's better than Townsend. I don't even know if it's necessarily a controversial statement. I mean, they're very comparable, the two players. Nevertheless, he was in the last year of his contract, so to get that renewed, always a good thing. No more teams have made bids on Harvey Elliott yet, so I'm hoping that still he might want to talk to me. He doesn't want to talk to me yet. What I wanted to check really quickly here is if I put contract status expired, partially English, and then untick realistic transfers, like what other players are out there? I mean, Marcus Rashford is currently a free agent. Obviously, the wages are going to be an issue for him. If he wanted to join me, you know, he could join us. I'd be okay with that. I have a feeling for him to join us, he's going to have to be a free agent for quite a while and probably will sign for a club before that ever happens, sadly. It's really sad when you're looking to stay up in the Premier League and you look at the players listed that are available for transfer, and they're all just transfer listed championship players. Like, it really makes you feel like the challenge I'm facing here doesn't really have a solution. Exeter have made a bid for Alex Matos. Ironically, I think this is the money that I just gave them for a transfer earlier on in this window. But you know what, Matos? JB left this window. I think you can leave this window too. I went to Udinese because they finally wanted to discuss a bid with Rolk again. They've made a counter negotiation here. That £3 million I got him for before, I don't think is going to be possible here. And on top of that, they don't want to loan him to me, which just makes me sad. Speaking of loans, James Wiles here, I'm trying to get a loan deal sorted for. We've had a load of teams make offers, few to play him as a regular starter, which seems promising. And elsewhere, Bernard Brennan, a player who I've got really high hopes for longer term, was on loan back at Lincoln after we signed him for £5 million. I'd love him to be playing regular football in the Championship. 40 days till the season starts, there or thereabouts. It might be a day or two out, but we have another sale. Matos, £2.4 million. Don't mind if we do. Harvey Elliott is still a free transfer, and he wants to talk to me again. Right. Has he lowered his demands? Let's try not to mess this up this time. Removing the match hire Sterner clause. He wants a signing on fee that's monstrous and I can't afford. A new sub fee. He's never going to be an unused sub. How's this as a starting point, Harvey? Anyone else getting deja vu? If he gets 20 goals, he can have 700k. And if he gets 20 assists, he can have another 700k. I'll put in the wage after international games again, which I'm hoping he never hits. I mean, at this point, I am just spamming bonuses and stuff and hoping that can make him happy. I can't go above 70k. Oh my, this is just painful, isn't it? I've already lowered the relegation release clause down to 10 million. Oh my, it hurts to look at this offer I'm giving him. If we avoid relegation, I'll give him 700k as well. How does that sound? Oh, we're so close. Please, Harvey, please. He wants £79,000 and a slightly bigger signing on fee. I can't afford to give him them. His appearance fee, by the way, is absolutely monstrous and making me feel unwell to look at. I'm upping all the bonuses just a little bit to max everything out. Oh, you know what? I'll put the sell-on fee at 25% too. He's turned it down again. I mean, that is... If he'd accepted that, half the comments are just telling me I'm a moron, aren't they? So maybe it's a good job he saved me from myself, but still... Oh, it hurts. I mean, he is good, but... I probably would have regretted the transfer offer anyway, wouldn't I? Right now, the only transfer I've got going on is Schmidt's. And even that doesn't feel like a transfer is necessarily going to happen. Ethan Nwaneri is actually available as a free transfer at the end of the current year. I could sign him now. The wages are a bit high, aren't they? He's on £83,000 as an emergency backup at Arsenal. Would they loan him to me? They would, but they want me to pay all his wages, and they're more than what I would have been paying Harvey Elliott. Also, did anyone spot Ricky D in this universe? We've had Ricky D as a player before, even though he's a regen. I've had this comment come up recently in the comment question, so I'll show it for people who don't know. But if you search face in the game, and I think the capitalization is important, turns out it needs to be in lowercase, but if you search for face in the game, it'll come up with a list of players here. Now, these players are all regens, but they are regens that are either former SI employees, researchers on Football Manager, or were competition and prize winners. And as a result of that, these will appear in lots of your save games. You can see here, Ricky D is one such player. I did get a few comments from people saying they had Daniel Hoey in their save game with the same birthday. That's because he's one of these face in the game players. They will always have the same birthday and month. The year that these players appear in a save game will vary. One of the telltale signs that you've got one of these players is they'll sometimes have a club that they support that isn't the club that they generated as. So yeah, if you didn't know that was a thing, that's a thing. It's a little Easter egg. Face in the game. Search in your own game. You'll probably have somewhere a Hoey and maybe a Ricky D. Should really be focusing on getting transfers done, instead explaining Football Manager Easter eggs. I'm in trouble this window, aren't I? Chelsea have made an offer for Schmidt. Oh, it's so over. He is just going to go to Chelsea now, isn't he, and break my heart. I mean, the odds are he wasn't going to come to me anyway, but still. Now, Rudy Shirtlift, I was looking to sell, you might remember, or rather to loan to Fulham, and they were going to use him as a squad player. Burnley have actually made an offer here to make him a regular starter. I've already accepted it. They're not paying his wages, but if he could get regular first-team football in the Premier League with Burnley, that could be really good for his development. Udinese player Rolk has requested a transfer. Oh, mate, come home. Please come home. They want 5 million for him. I'm going to offer the 3 million that we previously had in his loan contract. They've turned that down. I'll be honest, Rolk is probably worth 5 million if I can sign him for that, if the wage demands are reasonable. His wages have now gone up at Udinese to £18,000. They were like 2,000 before. How much is he going to want wage-wise to come and play for me now? Regular starter. 42,000 is not good. It could be worse. I'm going to try and lower this, but then to compensate up the kind of signing on fee massively to try and sway him to think that this is still a good offer. The reason for doing that is I would like to keep the wages low if possible. Players compare their wages to other players of a similar squad status. So if I give Rolk £40,000, lots of other first-team regulars, star players especially, are going to be expecting that and more. So the longer I can keep the wages lower, the better. Will he accept this? He really wants to upset me. I suggested 35,000. He instantly negotiated it up. Why aren't you being reasonable, mate? Okay, £36,500 a Rolk. That is a lot cheaper than we previously had offered him. Obviously, he was with us last year. I'm not going to pretend he was some super standout centre-back, but given the fact that the players on offer that I can realistically sign aren't upgrades, I feel like it's better the devil you know. I mean, in a weird way, of course, if I get Rolk back, I can still put Hoey in at centre-back, Rolk at right centre-back, and then we've still got Dolk to play at defensive mid, or maybe an alternative player. We're in this weird situation where I've not actually signed anyone, but the squad's not going to be weaker, and the squad that we have is a young team that maybe just for a second season in the Premier League is going to be better developed. This might, however, be a rather embarrassing time to admit that before today's episode, I went into the tactics and I actually started planning for like a more attacking version of what we already play that used a libero. I was sat thinking, you know what, if we get the right upgrades this year, maybe I'll switch the mentality to attacking. We'll play with a fun libero who steps up into the midfield, go back to having a regista like we used to, maybe mix in a Segundo Volante. Based on the events today, I think that is going to have to be put on the back burner for at least another season. I mentioned his name at the start of the episode. I am wondering if Will Lancashire might just be a good striking option to bring in. He is definitely the mould of striker that I really like in Football Manager. His goal scoring in the Championship hasn't been crazy. I need to wrap things up soon. Maybe this is the final act to wrap things up today. You can try and talk me out of it or talk me into it down in the comments, assuming Plymouth want to sell him for a reasonable amount. And they don't. 20 million. I tried 17.5 and they negotiated 23. So I've met them in the middle there. Lancashire is currently on like £4,000 a week. So his wage demands, I'd like to think, will be reasonable here. 32,000 isn't cheap, but is affordable. For the amount of money I'm paying him, I need him to commit to a 5-year deal. I also do want to, just as an insurance really, remove the relegation release clause. I'll up some of these bonuses and see what he says. He's negotiated 50. Where has 53,000 come from, lads? I know I've started off as some relegation release clauses. I just don't want to go too crazy with them just in case. All right, I'm going to have to put the relegation release clause back in the contract. It's going to be set at 20 million, which is what we're paying him. I'll offer him 34,000. Hopefully he accepts this. He doesn't. I mean, that, you know what? That there sums up today's video. This is such a weird and unique situation to find ourselves in. I've never really felt a Football Manager challenge like this. The recruitment is brutal. English-only players I knew was going to be tough. I really thought that this year our reputation was going to take this big bump up and it'd be easier to attract players. In many ways, it feels even harder. You might have noticed as well, first game for the season for us here is on Friday. It's against Everton. The last few seasons, in fact, for the entire save game, I've had a setting on that I didn't realise I had on. I can show you it really quick in Football Manager. I had this option here where only Saturdays and Wednesdays are used as match days. The reason for doing that is that when I was doing the Football Manager World Cup, that was the setting that was being used in that competition when I was representing England. So I needed to get used to it. I actually forgot to turn it off for years, and because the schedule is just set in stone at the start of a season, it meant that my reserves always played on Wednesdays and Saturdays when the first team played, which meant I could never make my kind of reserve players and, you know, players on the bench or outside the match squad available for those youth games to build match fitness. I remember to update it this year, so you will notice from this year onwards there will be some, well, more fluctuations when it comes to scheduling on when we're actually playing matches. It's weird, this series has been going on for like 6 seasons. I don't think anyone's ever mentioned it. So if you wondered why we were only playing on Saturdays and Wednesdays, that's why. Anyway, today has been a really long transfer special where I feel like the payoff in terms of transfers in really hasn't been there. Of course, we're looking at Schmitz, we're looking at Rolk. If we get those in as centre-backs, I'll be rather happy. The squad right now is looking on the bloated side. There's a load of players here who are looking to loan out, a few who I might still look to sell or loan out if the time and offer is right. I hate to say it, our first team is going to look the same this year, and the challenge that we had last year is just going to be the exact same challenge again. Which for you guys, I think is probably going to be a good thing. Some of you seem to love watching me struggle. Today's been a struggle. Tomorrow's probably going to be a struggle. The whole season's going to be a struggle. We'll be back tomorrow for a second part of a transfer special. Maybe signing Harvey Elliott. I don't know. Would you sign him? Let me know down below. I'll see you guys next time for more. I'm out.